You're listening to the Life of Lozo podcast.
We are live here at Life of Lozo.
He is the funniest, smartest, sexiest guy I know.
Lozo is now live.
Yo, on this week's podcast, we offer part 2 of the Leadership Q&A series. Chris and I discuss keeping the fire burning with tenured employees, how to manage up, and working through people who are bad for the culture. Thank you to our sponsors, as always, Stay Tuned Studios, The Taylor Shop Inc., 03 Productions, The Bee Brigade, Rhyme Designs Clothing, and Jack Sports Nutrition. Thank you to all the listeners, and check it out. Let's go. Yo, this week we are back and answering more leadership questions as a part of our ongoing Leadership Q&A series here on the Life of Lozo. Thanks again to everyone who texted, emailed, and responded on LinkedIn to provide questions, and I promise we will get to all of them in upcoming episodes. It may take a lot of those, but we will make it happen. We will definitely try to keep the same format as last time and, keep the episode down to about 30 minutes or so. So once again, we have Chris Stark from Stark Engagement Consulting all the way from LA asking questions and keeping the conversation going. So what up, Chris, and how's California?
California's great, man. It's about 75 degrees today and sunny.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm glad your listeners liked the last one. I'm glad that they kept sending in questions.
Yeah, man. No, it's been some really, really good feedback. People really enjoyed the conversation. We got some more questions that came in, and I think it was just, it worked well, the fact that I just forwarded everything to you and allowing you to vet some of these questions.
Yeah, well, like I said before, I think you have a great network. I think the questions you receive from these people really took it seriously. And some of them are things that I've struggled with in my own career. So they weren't fluff questions. Some of these were, deserved real answers. And I like that.
Sure. Cool, man. All right. Well, without further ado, then let's get it started, my friend.
Love it. The first leadership question of this evening comes to us from Ramon, who is a store manager. And he asks, how do I engage long-term associates to get them to have the fire to excel? So I guess Ramon's coming from a standpoint of maybe some people he works for, you have that vigor of the new employee, and maybe that vigor goes away after a few years.
Yeah, no, I think we had a similar kind of question in the first episode, just around how do you manage maybe people with tenure? I think this question is a little bit more specific to how do you keep them, engaged and kind of, to your point, just kind of having that new hire, new employee kind of excitement in what they do every day. So,
sure. Last week it was about, it assumes that the leader is younger and has less tenure. So that's a different kind of thing.
Sure.
This one, it's, I guess you always put your best foot forward on the first date, right? So that's when the employee wants to try the hardest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I would go back to just, I think, really engaging, those employees that have been there a while. I think people, in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, people make a choice to stay with a company, stay with a job because they enjoy it, or they're getting something out of it, or they're learning, they're growing, or they're seeing opportunity there from a professional standpoint. So I think, you really try to connect with them and define and better understand exactly what it is that is keeping them around, and then making sure that you are continuing to work on that with them, or bring them some new fun challenges or opportunities that can help them with their own professional growth and development. I think there's always a small percentage of people that have been there a really long time and probably shouldn't have to be there anymore, right? Like that. I think that's in every single business that you see that's out there. I think that's a very small percentage of the majority, but those are the ones that we remember. It's kind of like you have 200, 1,000 great interactions in a day, or fantastic conversations, or great back and forth with people. But usually the ones that you remember when you get home are the one or two that didn't go so well.
Of course.
So I think it's similar to this. Is I think the majority of a team that's been with a store, with a company, or in a position for a long amount of time, the majority of them enjoy something about it. And they just need to maybe either have somebody, reignite that passion for why they're there and what they do, or just re-engage them with new challenges or new learnings.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think I think when you talk about people losing that fire, there are kind of two kinds of people who lose their fire. They're the ones who lose it, and then they immediately start looking for something, and they kind of leave through natural attrition. But if you have a person who has been there 8 or 10 or 12 years, and they lost that fire years ago, they're not leaving tomorrow or anytime soon. That's just the general afraid of change. Yeah. So they're going to continue to go through the motions, but that's all they're doing. They've checked out and they're just going through the motions. And I think trying to figure out how to engage those people almost becomes like throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks, unless you get to the root of the problem of what caused the lack of engagement to begin with.
Sure.
And that can vary from employee to employee. So just kind of like, shooting at things and just like, whoa, let's try this, let's try that. You could be trying for a long time, and you could be talking to someone who might have something going on that has nothing to do with work.
Yeah.
So it's really, you got to make sure you're talking to all your people all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, just being smart about how and where you invest your time. I have a leader that constantly says, leaders vote with their time. So where we spend our time is where we set our priorities. And, what you got to be careful of sometimes is spending too much of that time trying to do that work. I think the ticket to entry for that type of engagement, with a general manager or with a store leader or somebody who is leading a very large team is, you gotta want something for yourself. You've got to be, have some intrinsic motivation to want to get better and to push the team forward and to, be somebody who's a positive influence on the team. And if those things can't be figured out within maybe the first or second interaction with that person or within the first couple of minutes of conversation, then really, are you fighting, for them more than they're fighting for themselves? And if they're not willing to at least come with those minimum expectations of wanting to be there and do great work, then really that conversation can move pretty quickly to why are you here? And if this isn't a great place for you, you're not happy here, then what can we do to help you, make a decision that can help you with your life and put you in a better situation for yourself?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You need to be able to put your head on a pillow every night as the manager saying you did everything you could. But at some point, you have to assume these people are all adults, and there is an expectation that when they come to work that they're doing their job and they're engaging with their coworkers and with their customers, and if they can't bring that to the table with some help, not everybody can do it on their own after they've been losing that fire for years. But if you've done everything you can and you've reached out and you've tried to help them and they're still not doing it, sometimes some tough conversations need to happen.
And I would think too, to Ramon's question, one of the things that I've found success in is in engaging those people that have been around for a while, allowing them to be mentors, right? Allowing them to engage and kind of get some of that energy from some of these newer employees that are coming into a business by helping lead them, mentor them, be a resource for them. But again, it just goes right back to, but they have to show up. They have to be role modeling behaviors. They have to be a positive force. They have to be in a good mindset, to be able to spend that time with new hires. Because the last thing I would want to do is take somebody who, is not reflective of the culture that we're trying to create and then give them the ability to influence new people that are coming in. I would rather invest that into somebody who is, who may have been here a while. Maybe they don't have the burning fire right now, but they show me that they want to be that. They show me that they want to do good work for the team and for themselves and for the company. And so then I'm going to take a little bit of a risk there and potentially sit down with them, spend a little bit more time, and then maybe provide them with an opportunity to lead some new people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. Each situation is different, and you got to make sure that you are, you can't, if all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, is that what it is? If all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yeah, right.
Well,
exactly.
Not every employee is the same nail. So you have to, before you can make any decision or go any course, you need to know your people and what they like and dislike and what makes them tick before you can even start this process.
Absolutely. Love it. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Way to kick it off. Let's go.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. This next one is from a listener whose name is also Chris. He asks, if you're trying to stay the course on what you know is right, how do you manage the expectations of your own boss who may be reverting to old tactics because business is down and they're worried?
No, this is the typical how do I manage up question, right? Political savvy 101. And how, as I read into that question, what I hear is when you feel that you're doing the right work and maybe your boss is being influenced to go not necessarily a different direction, but maybe they're stressed because numbers have to be there because business is down, and they're looking for a short result, a short gain, for a quick result. How do you stay the course? Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me. Right?
You figure Chris isn't the only one receiving that phone call from his boss. The boss is receiving the phone call every day from his boss.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a that's a balance. That's a balance that I think you learn over time, and because both things need to happen simultaneously. Like you've got to function in a way to be able to provide a result and to be able to deliver on the expectations of the company, of your boss, of a market, of a district, of a whatever region. That has to happen because a lot of these roles, and specific to retail, why do we exist and what are we doing here, and what's the expectations of us as leaders, and that's to represent the brand and drive results. At the end of the day. So I think that you've got to have an understanding that that results do matter, that metrics are important, that these are things that leaders and companies look at to gauge the success of behaviors and of strategy, but at the same time staying true to your North Star and knowing that the time and effort that you invest in, as you were just talking about, like taking the time to invest in your people and sit down and make sure they're doing it the right way, and make sure that they are clear about what the expectations are and that they understand kind of the vision of where things are going. Taking that time, you might not get a very quick boom, result that happens overnight. But we all know historically that type of leadership and that type of engagement leads to long-term results. So I think, my advice in that scenario would be to clarify with the leader and let them know that what they're asking you for is important to you as well. Because I think that's usually the number one thing that happens when there's not enough communication, or there's not enough clarity in the communication, is that a district manager or a GM or a direct boss feels like, I need to clarify that this is important for this person because this person hasn't talked about it in the recent past here. So I think, when you get that first message, or when you get that first thing from a leader who says, hey, here's something that we need to get better at, those are the things you got to kind of take a note on, and then let them know and say, hey Chris, I know you mentioned this the other day. I know something that we're not currently performing into expectations right now, but I'm all over it and we're working towards it. And I would expect that we're going to see some improvement relatively soon here. More than likely, for most leaders and bosses, that's a good first step, and it allows them to say, like, okay, cool. They know it's important to me, so now it's important to them. So now I'm going to let them do some of the work that they want to do.
Yeah, I think there's if you are a leader who's close to where the work gets done, so let's say if we take retail as an example, if you're a leader of a store, that's where the work is getting done, and that the behaviors are how you get the results you're looking for. If Chris's boss is, let's say, a district manager or a regional manager or someone who's not really close to the work itself, they don't know how to influence or control the behaviors directly. They know how to influence or control the results, meaning the scorecard. That's what they see every day. A leader in a store might be more behavior focused as opposed to results focused.
Sure.
Simply because they see the behavior every day. They can influence every day. They can impact it every day. But I think some of the best people leaders that I know, the people who really understand that you don't focus on results, you focus on behaviors, and the behaviors get you the results. Some of those really great leaders honestly do a really poor job of explaining the results still matter to them.
Right.
They know it is important to them. They know it's important to them, but they don't know how to articulate that correctly because they've spent so much of their time hyping up how important the behavior is and the experiences and the employee experiences. They're doing it for the same reason that the district manager is. They want that result.
Sure, absolutely.
But they don't know how to articulate it. So I think you're spot on when you say manage the expectations up by making sure that the vocabulary is on. Sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes it's when you're on that conference call, instead of leading with how great your people are, lead with how the behaviors that you're seeing out of your people are leading to the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think too, like to your point, with those that are doing the work, I think the speed of the business nowadays as well, in all businesses, and specific to retail, when you think of what's going on in the greater industry with the shift to online, and then almost now like a little bit of a shift back to brick and mortar, because people also want experience, that even if you've got a multi-unit manager, district manager, regional manager, VP, whatever the case is, even if they did the job 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 3 years ago, the job is so different now. You know what I mean? Like yes, the job in retail is still sell something, have a box or have clothing or have something go out the front door. But the way that you approach it, the speed in which you approach it, the way that you lead people with different generations and things like that, it can be very tempting for those leaders who maybe even those that grew up with the company that had started, in that part-time hourly salesperson role, and now fast forward 8, 9, 10, 12 years, and now they're that district regional market type of manager. While they can still have confidence that they knew how to find success with this company in these stores, the way in which you go about doing it it evolves so quickly that you constantly have to spend the time on the floor with the people to really understand what the dynamic now looks like if you're going to be able to then provide direction and development through leaders that are currently in the building.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think there could be a tendency for multi-unit managers to think, what's so hard here? I did this just fine and had double-digit comp growth 10 years in a row. Yeah, I know there was no internet, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, completely irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I would completely, that's just one of the tougher things to always kind of work through, is making sure that you're constantly communicating what people want to hear, or not what people want to hear, but what your boss is kind of looking for. So here's an example that I use with my teams. Is like, I expect more communication when we're finding opportunities or when we're not meeting expectations in certain things. I expect to see more communication then than when we're having success and we want to high five each other and take screenshots and send them out to everybody and say, hey, look at how great we are, right? Like, yes, we need to celebrate. Yes, we want to have fun. Yes, we want to take a pause for a second and really recognize good work and great work and people that are doing that. But I fully expect that when we're not where we need to be, or when we're seeing an opportunity, that we over communicate quickly, because what that does for me is it lets me know right away that it's important to my people, that we're not going to pretend that what's happening, that I don't see that other people don't see that. And that gives me confidence to know that they're looking at it, they're making adjustments, and they're getting the ship back on the right path.
Right. Maybe if we don't say anything, he won't know the numbers are bad. It's like, no, that doesn't happen.
Exactly.
So it's better to just say something and make sure that your boss knows. Yeah, I see this. I understand there's an issue here. Yeah. I'm working on it. This is how I'm working on it. But yes, I know it's important.
As a matter of fact, if I don't hear anything for 2 or 3 days, I'm actually going to go look now. Right.
Right. That's spot on. It's like as a parent of youngsters, I'm more confident when they're making a lot of noise. It's when they're silent that it's like there's something really wrong.
Totally. As you well know, right? I got 2 little girls, 2 and 9 months. And when it gets quiet, it's like my dog. Same thing with my dogs, right? It gets quiet. Okay, what the hell is going on?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. When it's noisy, it's just going to be a mess and whatever. It's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. When they're silent, they're plotting to take over the world. That's
Absolutely.
the problem.
Sweet. Well, cool. Thanks, Chris, for the question. It's awesome.
Of course. The third question we have is from Liz, who is a SVP. Mm-hmm. What was your biggest leadership learning? Meaning, if you had a do-over, what would it be?
Ooh. The inevitable, if you could turn back time, right?
Sure. If you could go back in time and talk to Lorenzo 12, 15, 20 years ago as he's starting his first job, what advice would you give him?
Oh, man. Well, you know what? I don't know that it would go as far back as to like the first job, but I can tell you...
Right, McDonald's Lorenzo doesn't need any advice.
Yeah, exactly. McDonald's Lorenzo is happy, dude. That dude's got a job. Right. He's got a paycheck. He gets free food on the way home.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, McDonald's Lorenzo is loving life. He's loving it. No, I would say leadership wise. You know, it's funny. Something that happened to me while you and I were doing some work together a long time ago, and it's always a constant reminder of. Remembering to stay true to your values and remembering to speak up, right? When things in certain situations and certain leaders, when you feel that that there is a not a bad direction per se, but maybe when almost tying back to the earlier question, when the work that's being asked to do and the way in which it's being asked to be done is not actually aligned with the core values of what we're trying to accomplish as a team. There's a lot of ways for leaders to approach work. There's a lot of ways for leaders to manage people. And I think that the lesson that I learned was no matter how good and how valuable the work is and how much it could have a larger positive impact on a team, a population, or even a company, that if the team that is doing that work is not being treated appropriately, if the team doing that work, for lack of a better term, is in some instances being abused to a degree, even if the work is such fantastic work as a leader of people, you still have the responsibility to make sure that that's known. You know, even if there's a risk to stopping the work. I know it's kind of a large, vague answer, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of one of those things. It was a reminder for me of remembering that regardless of how good the work and the output could be and how much of a positive influence and change it can have on something, if the people involved in that work, or the team is not being managed in an inspirational, positive way, that responsibility falls on everybody to say something. So that's what I would always say. I think it taught me the lesson of always trusting my gut, standing up for my values, and speaking up when I feel that something's wrong, regardless of what the political backlash may be.
Right. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't continue doing work that doesn't align with your values forever. You're going to burn out on it. No one wants to come to work feeling that way. So, if it's a singular event, maybe you suck it up. But if it's a pattern, you gotta say something.
Well, especially like the hard part too is like if the work is good work. Right, but the way in which it's being managed is inappropriate. Right, that's even harder. Like it's easy when it's
You could almost feel a responsibility to the people you're impacting. Like, I can, I'll take this because who I'm impacting is benefiting so much that I'll just suck this up and I'll take the abuse and I'll do whatever I need to do. Because if I speak up, sure, I'll have a better life, but this work will end. And that's a trade-off that I'm not willing to risk.
Right. Yeah, because there's a part of leadership that's protecting your people, right? So you're going to take some of those, those hits and those bullets for people when necessary, especially when you know it's the right work, and especially when you know that that's some of the job of a leader, right? Sometimes you just take it for the team and you shake it off, and they never know any better, right? Because that's really kind of what your job is to a degree. But I think to your point, when it's consistent or when it becomes thematic over time, you then have to say something. And that's what I would say is I try to instill that in all of the the people that I work with and leaders that I work with is that if you ever feel like it's not right, whatever that reason is, like even if you're not sure what the reason is, but just you get that spidey sense tingle of like something doesn't feel right here, say something, right? Say something about it, because what you never want to be is that person who fast forward a little bit in the future, who something happens and you go, man, I knew, I didn't know what or how, but I knew something was wrong here, and I didn't trust my gut. That's the type of thing you want to avoid.
Yeah, completely agree.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The next question we have is from David, who is a vice president of customer experience. He asks, how do you get rid of a person who doesn't fit well with the culture of the company, doesn't get along with coworkers, and doesn't self-initiate, but who still fulfills all their job responsibility, comes in on time, etc., so they aren't really violating any policy?
Oh, I love it. You take them to an office.
David wants to get rid of some people here. You know?
Yeah, I see that. David is a fan of what we call elements of attrition. You find an area that's off camera. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But no, but seriously, David, write that down.
Oh, you were joking?
Yeah, write that down, David. Write that down. No, that's great. I think having people that just show up and then do the job, and they do it okay, right? They get the minimum expectation done of the job, but then every other thing they do is just a pain in your ass, or just causes waves, or causes peers and other people like unnecessary trouble. Those are probably the ones that are the most frustrating.
Sure.
Because
any individual incident by itself really doesn't matter much. Mm-mm. It's just when you add 100 of them together over the course of 6 months, it just takes a lot of your emotional capital as a leader.
Yeah, and I think too, in a world that is risk avert, and when you have companies and some of them with teams that have their own HR teams, when they have companies that have HR teams that are third party, people are companies and HR are looking for consistency in answers. They're looking for making sure that the decisions that are being made are kind of across the board the same.
Well, they're looking to protect the company too.
Well, of course,
so
and
you can't just get rid of somebody because I just felt like getting rid of them.
Absolutely, and that's their job. And even in wonderful states like Florida, where we have the ability, according to state law, to let anybody go without even giving them a reason. Like, we don't do that, for most companies, because it's not the right thing to do at the end of the day. And I think that that doesn't help build loyalty to your brand or a culture that is empowering and inspirational over time, right?
Yeah.
So I think my advice to David would be very much so to have very honest, real, transparent conversations with that person. And saying things that are very that would never get you in trouble as a leader. Like, I am perfectly fine to sit down with somebody and say, hey, David, here's kind of what I see, right? I see that you do your job, and you're very much, right at expectations of the things that we ask you to do. I hear personally that you are always talking in the background during meetings, that you always kind of have something to say, that you share with myself and other people that you're not happy here, that that I constantly have peers of yours and other leaders come to me and say that you're not making their job easier. So what I want to talk about is why are you here? Why is this the place for you? If at the end of the day you don't seem happy, you're not having a positive influence on the team, you're not helping us push our business forward, and I don't see you taking on any initiative to develop yourself to be a better employee here. So, what does that look like, and why are you here? And I think having a conversation like that, if you were to ask any HR legal person, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with stating the obvious, because it wasn't hearsay, it wasn't rumors, it wasn't what I think. It's literally what I've heard, what people have told me, what I've observed myself, what you've said to me specifically. But I think calling that out with the person at least starts a certain type of a conversation where they understand that you understand kind of where they're at, And then I think over time, those types of conversations either help them get to a better place where they want to be an impactful, positive element of the team, or over time, if you have those more and more consistently, they start to understand that like you're not going away. This isn't going to stop. And maybe this isn't the best place for them as far as like the work they want to do or how they want to spend their day and what you're trying to achieve with the culture.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the written down, the words of David in his question. And the examples he gives is he says, a person who doesn't fit well with the culture, doesn't get along with coworkers, and doesn't self-initiate. Those are characteristics of a person who would rather be 100 other places than at that job.
Yep.
So there's a reason they're acting that way. I'm sure they're not like this 100% of the time. I'm sure there's something in their life where they do get along with other people and they have passion over something. Apparently it's not this job. So asking a person why this is, from a standpoint, the employee that David is talking about has probably never been asked that by a leader ever.
Right.
Because leaders have such an aversion to having these conversations with people that are not rooted in these tangible, oh, you were late. It's easy to have a conversation with an employee who's consistently late. You know, there's a time clock that backs it up. But as soon as a leader, we're expected to give our opinion on something that has to do with how we feel about a situation, as opposed to just what the time clock says or what the policy book says, we have this real hard time having these conversations with people. And I think it's a fairly new thing. I don't think that was the case a generation or two ago, but it's the case now. But at the end of the day, those are the conversations that build the relationships or end them. But the relationship, the way it currently sits, is not working well for either people. And that conversation, that tough conversation, will either lead to David's employee turning stuff around because no one has ever taken the time to actually ask him, why are you not happy? And can I do anything to help you be happy? Or it will help that person not be there anymore. Yeah. And either case is a solution to this problem.
Yeah, or at least it's the first step to finding the solution to the problem, right?
That's true. It's the first step.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think that, you know, it's funny. We will sit there and allow our people to voice their opinion all day long, right, and tell us how they feel and tell us what's going on. But then when it comes to
we encourage it.
We encourage it. Right, 100%. But then when it comes to leaders, we have this stigma where it's like, I'm not allowed to share how I feel, right? Or how that behavior impacts me, which is not actually the case at all. Like, it's perfectly fine for you to say how you feel. I think as a leader, you still have the responsibility to utilize the correct vocabulary and the positioning and the you know, the ability to keep composure when you provide that type of thing. But it is perfectly fine for you as a leader to have the conversation and say, well, based upon your behaviors, what I see from your results and what I hear from our team and from our leaders, I feel that you don't want to work here, right? This type of behavior where you're not helping your peers of this culture, you know, it makes me feel that this is not the right place for you, right? And people will get nervous when they say, like, are you threatening my job? Are you telling me that you're going to fire me? I'm just telling you how I feel, right?
Right.
Like, that's all that is. I'm just the same way that I ask for your opinion on how you feel about what we're doing here. I'm going to share with you how I feel about what I see and what I observe. And seek to understand why we're at this crossroads right now, and then really clarify if there's anything I can do to help you get to a place where your behavior and your attitude and your willingness to do this job is meeting and exceeding expectations. Or I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help you get to a place in life and a place where you can actually add some value and be happy with the way you work. I'm committed to either one. You get to choose.
Right. And don't, it's not about you get to choose. It's about you should choose what you believe will make you the happiest.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You get to choose, or I'm going to choose for you.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You get first right of refusal.
Absolutely.
But the decision is going to be made.
Right. Yeah. The wheels are turning. So, like, unless you want to hit the tree right between this fork of the road here, I would suggest one or the other. Right. But we're going one way or the other.
Yes, that is true.
Very cool. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, that's 4 questions. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Time flew by on that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're getting pretty efficient at this, dude.
I like it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think too. I know we have some more questions, so we'll kind of keep this thing going, and we'll figure out a little bit of a cadence on how often we do these leadership Q&As. But I want to take feedback from some of our listeners who have provided us with suggestion on direction on maybe us taking this kind of its own route, and really having a lot more conversation about leadership. So I think we might want to do that.
I tend to agree. You know that scene in Bruce Almighty where Jim Carrey answers like 100 prayers and then 5 million more show up in the 100?
Yep.
That's how I feel like with these questions. We go through, we're able to get 4 in, but then we answer 4 more questions and then you receive 30 more from more people in your network. We'll never get through them.
Yeah. No, I think, I think it would be kind of cool. So maybe that'll be a little bit of a spoiler alert. Let's do something a little bit more baked out in regards to like truly just talking about leadership here. And then I think it would also be cool to add a little bit of maybe some live element to this. Because that's kind of where I think the fun of this is, asking people in real time for some questions and maybe answering them that way. And we'll go from there. But that would be kind of fun, man.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're already doing this technically live in that, you are seriously seeing these questions as I'm reading them to you for the very first time. So I think you're ready for it. I think you can field anything that someone wants to ask.
Well, I would hope so. After 20-something years, right? I better for the most part. We've kind of seen we between the two of us, we've pretty much seen it and been a part of it and have an opinion on it. Whether or not we made the right decision as a leader, that's always up for debate. But I think we learned from it.
No, it's not up for debate. We often make the wrong decisions as leaders. Yeah, there's no debate about it. Hopefully, the net of our contribution is positive according to most people, though.
Exactly. Yeah, according to most people, right? Absolutely. Yes. Cool. All right, dude. Well, hey, thanks again for helping out, and thanks everybody for listening. Again, please keep the questions coming. Feel free to shoot me a text if you got my number, or email lozo@lifeoflozo.com, and or just message me on LinkedIn for Mr. Chris Stark here, starkengagement.com, and at Leadership Meebs on Twitter and on Facebook.
The Life of Lozo podcast is brought to you by Stay Tuned Studios, The Taylor Shop Inc., 03 Productions, The Beat Brigade, Rhyme Designs Clothing, and Jack Sports Nutrition. Please visit the links in the episode details, subscribe to the podcast, and do me a solid and rate me 5 stars on any type of review, including iTunes, Google+, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Thanks, y'all. Check us out next week. Lozo out.